when we are in this ego doer compressed state, what we are occupied with, of course, is notness, struggle, struggling to do this or get there, get this, arrive at somewhere because it's not here, it's not happening, it's not in is. Therefore, I have to do something. It's kind of like the isness of it is replaced with the noise of it, the noise of struggling and confusion and the preoccupation with lack and not here-ness, right? Something that is clear is turned into chaos, static, struggling, rolling around in the muck, preoccupied with details and the minutia. And of course, the opposite of that is the letting go from the imprisonment or the confinement of the clenched fist. Imagine a buoyant object and you're pulling it down underwater. It takes effort, it takes weight. There's a sense of heaviness, right? To pull something down underwater, to notness, right? And when you let go, then it automatically, naturally floats. It comes back into its natural condition or state, which is floating, yesness. And so you can notice also a sense of buoyancy, lightness, right? Expandedness when you're not choosing to pull something down in this tight fisted ego doer compression, you can say. Also, I noticed the natural sense of connectedness, when we are in this allowing place, when we have quote unquote given its freedom back, when we have given its autonomy back into isness. It's as if everyone and everything is connected here in isness, because that's the natural fundamental essence of everything. Isness, yesness, existence, aliveness. When we compress something in this ego doer separated, fist, then that's the time you feel a sense of disconnectedness, right? And it's the physics of it. Imagine sand. You're in a sandy ground and you enclose a handful of sand in your fist. Well, then that handful of sand is now quote unquote separated, right, from the expanse of the sand. And so there is this illusory sense of division, dividedness, separation, but only because we've, myopified in that close fisted place. And since this handful of sand is enclosed, right, separated from the expanse, the rest of the sand, well, then now it feels incomplete. It feels lack. And I have to go get this, get that, arrive at this, achieve this in order to resolve this sense of lack, this sense of incompleteness. But it can never be quote unquote resolved with being in that state. Basically, you cannot resolve a issue in the same place as it was born in. So this sense of lack or dissatisfaction or incompleteness is born, right, in this dimension, in the tight fist, separated me ego doer mode or configuration. Since it exists in that dimension, the sense of dissatisfaction, lack, and incompleteness, it doesn't matter how much stuff you've accumulated or how much achievements that you have achieved or how much, let's say, mystical experiences that you have experienced. As long as you're in this mode, the tight-fisted ego usurpation mode, that air or climate of incompleteness will persist, because that's the signature, that's the quality, that's the feature of the dimension of notness. When there is the ceasing, cessation of this colonization, and allow the yesness or autonomy of consciousness awareness of your field, then you'll find the sense of causeless joy, you know, not because you've accumulated so much stuff or achieved or gotten so much whatever achievement. It's because the climate or the atmosphere of this mode is non-lack, it's non-incompleteness. There is trust that you'll know what you need to know when you need to know it, or that you'll have whatever you need at the time you needed it. And of course, it doesn't mean, walking on rainbows and riding unicorns until death. If there's a challenge that you need, or that will bring you a lot of insights or great expandedness or great realization, then you encounter that. You see, it's not close-minded, it's not narrow viewed like the ego dimension, which is only preoccupied with accumulation, resolving issues, resolving a sense of lack, and wallowing around in the muck, in trauma, in separatedness, in division, in dissatisfactions, and how the world and other people are not acting according to my will. Right, that's the very narrow view, myopic view of the me ego doer dimension. Right, it's not holistic, it's not intelligent, it's very one dimensional, it's very narrow viewed. It operates in this self-serving, compartmentalized, fragmented way. What the me wants, how can I please the me, how can I inflate the me? And for a number of people, it's at the expense of the world and others. It's at the expense of values and integrity. As long as the me gets what it wants, then everything else doesn't matter, right? That's what's kind of interesting, though, in this human earth experience. Is our free will, is the free will to entertain notness. It's the free will to withhold autonomy, to withhold the isness of something and enclose it, imprison it in our fist, and experience that, experience the experience of notness, of this constricted, compressed state, the manual ego doer state, you can say. An analogy that comes to mind is the light switch. We can switch the lights off by pulling it down, and letting go of it turns the light on, you can say. The off mode is the manual ego doership, right? Closed fist. And the on mode is the allowance of easiness. It's the granting of autonomy, granting of yesness, isness, and setting it free from the hands of the manual ego doer. What comes to mind is that the manual ego doer configuration is like being focused on the solute. Again, like being focused on details. You're focused on details in order to get to the yesness of a certain concept, right? So, for example, the yesness of worthiness. When you're in the ego doer dimension, the yesness, the natural state of worthiness, again, has been turned into notness, has been turned into static and busyness. And now the ego doer is focused on details, right? Achieving this and that, getting this and that, getting more and more approval and validation and whatever, in order to get to the yesness of worthiness. It's like it's become focused on the minutia, you know? It's hanging out in the rubbles, in the destructedness of worthiness. Hence, therefore, I must do something. It's not here. I have to go pick up the pieces. And of course, the giving back, it's autonomy, the granting back the yesness of worthiness. You can say it's kind of like akin to solvent. It dissolves the noise, all the solutes, the staticky stuff, allowing isness, right? Allowing autonomy allows you the enjoyment of it. You can notice the sense of clarification. When at first you're so in your mind, you're so in your head, right? And there's this fog of busyness, struggling, dissatisfaction, etc. If there's the switch, from lights off to lights on, then suddenly it's as if the fog or that haze gets cleared. It's kind of like the shadows disappear when you switch on the light, right? And so you can say it's very interesting. It's mechanical, it's not personal. It's like the feature of the different orientation or dimension of consciousness awareness. And this is really practical. It can be applied to even trivial little things. Like, for example, yesterday, this might sound really silly and trivial and insignificant, but there's a jar that I cannot open. And I cannot, for the life of me, open it using brute force. So I took a knife and tried to, pop the lid with a knife. But it still wasn't working. I was confined in the mind, right? Trying to open the lid via manual ego doership, you can say. And it's just not working. I was already ruining and damaging the lid. And so I realized this is not working. Let me step back. Let me allow, right? Let me allow for the isness of the opening of the lid. Let me open my field to allow, for the opening, the isness of the opening of the lid. Because in the manual ego doer orientation, there's the hyper focusing on the notness of it. And then the more that I cannot open, the more I struggle, the more I'm hyper focused on the notness of the opening of the lid. You can argue that it's just a coincidence or whatever, but when I step back and be in that allowing place of granting autonomy and not withholding it, and switch the light on and just gave the autonomy to consciousness awareness, you can say, I was able to put the knife in a proper place and was able to pop the lid open. The sense of it, or the mechanics of it, you can say, is when we are in this, ego doer close-fisted orientation, we are withholding, we are in withholding. And since we are in withholding, it's as if we have to figure things out by ourselves. We have to do everything, or we have to be the manual ego doer, right? And there again, there's a sense of isolatedness and disconnectedness. Again, we're lost in the minutia. We're lost in details. It's like it's up to us, it's up to us to figure out the details and stuff. But when we let go, open our hands, allow, right? Allow for it to pour forth, you can say, then it's as if the details take care of themselves. When I stepped back and just allow, then the detail of me putting the knife in a proper place happened. It's like it's the one that provided the detail that's necessary. Like you're tuned into the whole concept, and it's the whole concept that provides the detail, that takes care of the details. You see, in granting it the autonomy, then it frees you up, right? It frees you up from that job. It puts you in a place of enjoyment of the concept, of the easiness of the concept already, without you running around trying to get there, trying to achieve this and that. You're not entertaining the destructedness of the concept, right? So you're not running around in the rubbles, in the muck. You are in appreciation of the wholeness of it, of the easiness of it. And so thus then you can say you are served. You know, you are served by the easiness of it. Instead of you being a slave, a servant, in order to get to the easiness of it, right? And so yeah, the best thing to do is to confirm with yourself, to experiment with yourself. Try toggling back and forth. You know, when a situation arises, you can explore different approaches. You can sense when the initial arising is victimization. Well, then, you know, acknowledge that, see that it's a valid approach, it's a valid option, and then test out, you can say, a different approach, right? It's impersonal. See how it feels. Oh, if I approach it this way in an empowered place, how does it feel? Is it better? I have option A and option B, which is actually more beneficial for me. You become familiar, you know, with our fluidity. We're not just stuck in one option, in one approach. It's impersonal mechanics, impersonal options, you can say. Same with the lights off, lights on. You can toggle back and forth. Ego doership, withholding autonomy, wallowing around in notness. How does it feel, you know? Notice the atmosphere, notice the climate of it. There's static, struggling, sense of heaviness, sense of burden, sense of like, you know, pulling something down underwater and not allowing it to, you know, to breathe, to be in the natural expanded place. And then lights on, of course, is the granting, you know, granting of the isness or autonomy of something. But of course, the solute, quote unquote, the solute of the manual ego doership seem to dissolve because it's a different atmosphere, it's a different configuration. And this quote unquote dissolution of the ego doer, unfortunately for some, they make it so dramatic. They perceive it to be some kind of like a scary thing or losing control or whatever. And there's sort of this like dramatic dying or something. But not really, you know, not really. You can again, you can toggle back and forth, you know, you can toggle back and forth the sense of manual ego doer and then releasing quote unquote no self, you know, the configuration of no self. Withhold it again, colonize again, then the ego doer is here. It's the atmosphere of it, it's the feature of it. It's impersonal, we can say. Again, it's actually pretty simple. Perhaps it's helpful to experiment with trivial little things so that we get used to it, you know.